All right, guys, we are back. I'm back. Hope you enjoyed the two fellas last week. I was certainly not sick with anything that's been going around.
But welcome to just plain old cold and I think hay fever, like allergy season is on.
Yeah, because I could tell.
I feel my nose a little bit.
Like when we were at the gym, they cut down all those trees too in the big truck lot there, and I was out there with. It was just stuffy and a mess, but I was out there doing walking lunges with Lincoln, and I get within like 40 meters of that spot, and I am a mess. Like you can hear me like 15 times because I sneeze like a screaming fucking dying, like which creates a big problem on public transportation with masks.
Yes, it does. But I can feel it in my nose for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I get it worse in March, but being allergies right now is not a good thing.
I was talking to a guy. He said it's going to get even worse though, like especially in the winter because everyone's out. It's cold. We cycle, stuffy noses. You're never going to know what's what, and everyone's just going to be on guard for everyone. But
anyway.
But we wanted to do. Julien and I were just talking before the podcast. We want to jump in and do a short just
recap on everything. Yep.
We want to open with the shorts on the language.
Yes, I'm watching a podcast between Michael Malice, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Lex Friedman. And I liked it a lot because Michael Malice defined himself as an anarchist, obviously. I was like, my boy. And I'm listening, and he puts an example for him of what anarchy is, and he uses language.
Yeah.
So that's what he means by anarchy. And right away, I was like, what he's explaining is the difference between constraint and objective. Mm-hmm. And that's how he was phrasing language. Because if you look at language, the idea is you start with a bunch of constraints. This is A, this is E, this is C, and everything. Like this is how you put it together. You got grammar. Yeah. You put the verb and then the adjective, and then you put the and after that, he was like, okay, go play.
Yeah, and it's just meant to convey a message. Almost the specifics don't matter.
That's a goal.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal is communication, but there's no objectives, and it's what we call it's a divergent idea, which means it's go get more complex.
Yeah.
And as you set it up like that through cultures, you see languages just getting more and more and more complex, and there's an evolution happening. It's a divergent mindset. You see the urban dictionary, like the stuff gets almost, it's the combinations are almost infinite.
Yeah.
And if you look at language, this is what literally has brought the most joy and the most sorrow, almost more than anything. It's a constraint-based system until you turn it into an objective-based system. And what is an objective-based system? You get lawyers.
Yeah.
Right. But what I found very interesting is lawyers, the key is like, this needs to define precisely that or whatever. So now you have a convergent mindset where they all sound exactly the same. And the only people I can understand what the fuck they're saying are other lawyers.
Yeah, nobody protects the job of lawyers better than lawyers.
Just by talking the way they talk.
Yeah.
Where it's it's a convergent mindset that leads to only one possible way, which means everything sounds exactly the same, is exactly the same. The opposite of the divergent mindset. Yeah. So I thought that was explaining very well the constraint versus objective, and also defining training extremely well. Yeah. If you look at a lot of the fitness industry now, they're all a bunch of lawyers making everything very obscure.
Yeah.
Almost impossible to understand from someone outside. Even CrossFit did that with naming the girls and stuff like that. I'm doing Grace, and outside of 15,000 people in this world,
everyone thought you were doing some girl named Grace.
Exactly, nasty girls. You go like, that's weird. Although I'm pretty sure that's going to have to go away.
Probably.
With all the Glassman stuff. Yeah, I think saying nasty girl is probably a bad idea now.
Yeah.
Hashtag me too. So it's going to be... So you could see how they're doing that in reading a program from a typical now sports stuff. It wasn't like that. I saw that happening in the last 10 years, really.
Yeah.
Where everybody's trying to get sciencey. Did you see how many ads they say like science-based training or shit like that? Everything. And I'm like, dude, it's a set of inclined dumbbell presses. Just chill out. That's not science-based.
And using the term science-based, and maybe the volume and whatever that is based on some sort of thing. But the fact is, using the term science-based is a way to sell to a person, which means I know the things that you don't, so believe me.
Right.
And
it's an appeal to authority all the way.
And that is kind of all it is. But there's interesting too on the lawyer speak side of things was I was listening to something that said, like, culturally, what happens too is in any society, they get to kind of the certain point, or in any country, as a country, say, develops its way towards the first world, is everything is extremely unsafe, kind of. For the whole, your average risk as an individual is very low, or is very high. And then the lawyers work their way in, and these structures get built, and litigation comes in, and all of a sudden you're less likely to get decapitated at Disneyland because lawyers are on the hunt, and it is, and there is all those structures come in. So to a certain point, it's extremely beneficial to the whole. Capitalism and lawyers go together, and then. It gets to the point where it starts to consume itself by trying to protect itself. Because
they have to follow constraints, and then eventually they get powerful enough that they set objectives to get more. The system starts to... So instead of being humans, it becomes a system trying to protect itself, and you get into objective-based. But I think we're starting to face that in what we do as well, where programming becomes more and more obscure into percentages and this and this and that. But when they say science-based, I'm always laughing because I still see like a lot of the same science from the 70s, honestly, being applied today. But so like no one gives a shit. Like what kills me is like it seems to me like no one gives a shit anymore. They're just repeating something that they heard from the 70s in order to sell the next one and making it more obscure to say that they're smarter. It sounds to me like it's lawyer talk.
Yeah, it is. It's you create a framework to confuse everyone on the way to you, and you protect the castle. It was really interesting for me doing, like when we did the Meathead muscle program, was I had for the major lifts, like the 3 major lifts.
Can I say something real quick? Yes, absolutely. You need to charge the battery.
Ooh, I thought it was... Oh, your cat knocked it out. That's why.
Yes, you did.
All right. Good catch, though. We would have been in trouble.
Yeah.
We would have been in trouble in about 10 seconds, probably.
Okay, cool.
Good catch. Yeah. But so when we did the Meathead muscle program, for the major lifts, is I gotta communicate to 60, 70 people at a time what they need to do for these things. So I went with, and this was written, that program was written over a year ago, so pre-COVID, right? Yeah. And so there was percentages on there, and then real guidelines that I had put when taking feedback from the guys that I had run through the pilot. So they knew what roughly it meant. Because as I went through the stuff now with the group, I had to explain to everybody, like imagine doing percentage-based training right now and having fucking no idea. It's all based on your 1 rep max. And I had to tell all these people, like, do not get married to this percentage because it's COVID. Half of these people, for many, many months, gyms were closed. So now these percentages that you're basing on are useless. Or
you have access to equipment that is not the same, that you cannot really modify too much. Let's say you have 4 sandbags. Suddenly,
So what I had done, I so reluctantly, it was the one piece of like that true percentage-based training that I couldn't figure a way to work out. So I mitigated it with extra language, right? Yeah. And I found in the end still that even the base point of percentages, once we were into this summer when the program was running, I was like, oh, I gotta fucking pretty much explain to everybody that these percentages almost are irrelevant to them. Because I was like, if you're familiar with what your 1 rep max is, or if you're maxing out right now after spending 3 months at home, 4 months at home, you're out of your fucking mind. Nobody's in a competition to know. So it was actually a good exercise for me to actually figure out how to explain things without that, using more instead of more
words. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But yeah, it's really that's an interesting concept though, like you had brought up before, that language is meant to just grow exponentially as a divergent.
And so whenever you see a convergent mindset anywhere, you know you're on an objective-based one. And that's my problem with the program leading with 1 rep max is, can you get better at deadlifting? Yes, it doesn't make you stronger. You can be working on the skill alone or stuff like that. That's I thought that was because people always struggle with constraint versus objective, so I thought that was a good way for people to visualize the difference between the two. I think language explains it very well.
Well, and that's something I noticed, especially with the last seminar that we did, where it almost became explaining objectives versus constraints in every little thing, from movement to programming to tension to nervous system to nutrition to macros. It really is almost everything being done in that lens. And then we found out kind of at that seminar that I think in Dutch for sure, and I think there's some languages where the term constraints
Right.
doesn't.
We couldn't find.
There isn't really a parallel,
yeah,
so you have to put, and it was like boundaries or parameters. Like you have to meet in the middle.
Right, because you have
so language even makes it hard to communicate what constraints.
Exactly, you had to convey the concept.
Yeah.
Because the word itself did not work.
Yeah.
But that's normal because that's not the point of the word.
Yeah.
The point of the word is just to communicate.
Exactly.
The point is, what is it you're communicating? It's still a concept. So it's concept first that you communicate through constraints. And that's what language is. Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was a great way to put it. So when Michael Mallis talks about anarchy, what he's talking about is constraint-based. He's talking about having a divergent mindset.
Yeah.
Versus what we're doing today in politics. So I thought that was a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, that's short. We'll get to the next one you're going to see is going to be kind of our fall 2020 update, let you know all the new stuff. So stay tuned. We'll see you soon. Support the podcast. Head on over to podcast.strongfit.com. There you could donate or join the YouTube channel. Also, go to strongfit.com. There you're going to find our online courses, education, and all of our seminar dates should be there as well. Head on over to strongfitlibrary.com to keep up to date on everything Julien's been working on. And follow StrongFit1 on Instagram and Tyler F. and Stone.